John McEntee here from the Rock Fantasy Files, and I'm here with Ann Bowman, our Frantic Ann Productions. She used to book shows at the legendary Club G Willikers and also had some pretty much epic parties back in the day. There's a lot of cool, interesting stuff we could talk about. Looking forward to this. Yeah, welcome, Ann. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you too. Thanks for having me do this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah,
Would you forget that I wrote for Metal Maniacs for 10
Oh,
years, and most people, that's
I
where they know me from.
I know. I thought about it. I never write down anything. I just kind of do it by memory, and I always know you from, the G Willikers and when you're imagining Goreaphobia and stuff. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, actually, you are. Yeah, I mean, doing Metal Maniacs for 10 years is a big deal, and I have to thank you for because you did numerous interviews for us back in the day for Metal Maniacs. So I totally appreciate that, especially at that time, because when you were doing it, we really needed the help.
Yeah, because that was in the 2000s, from
Yeah.
2001 to 2010 when it
Ye
went out of business.
yeah, that was a tough time for what we were doing, so, that kind of, promotion of Metal Maniacs was definitely greatly appreciated, so I have to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I hooked up all my friends.
That's cool. Um, yeah, I guess let's just go from, I guess, as far as I know, um, your beginnings. I mean, how did you get into even booking shows at G Willikers? And just wait, just to make it clear, G Willikers was a club. In case you don't know, was a club in Pennsauken, New Jersey, that had a lot of just legendary shows. It was really an important part of kind of the early, death metal scene for bands like us, Incantation, Immolation, Mortician, Goreaphobia, was it
Deceased.
Hazarax? Just so many bands. We'll get into all that, and yeah, it was a small club, but it was just a really cool. Had some great great shows there, and it was at a time when not a lot of venues were giving bands like us and our peers any it was tough for us to get shows, and there were shows there almost all the time. So okay, now that I got that out of the way, yeah, basically, how did that even start? I mean, when did you start doing it? Because I know from about our first show was in 1990, and I think in July or August or somewhere around that time, but I know you were doing it before then. So how'd that all come about?
Well, it actually came about because of Goreaphobia, managing Goreaphobia. Right around that time, there was a club in Philly in the very neighborhood that I'm at right now, is the same neighborhood I grew up in. Um, and there was a club called the Empire Rock Club. It
Oh,
was a great club, and they used to do, like thrash shows and um, hair metal bands in the 80s. And right around the time that like death metal was starting to come around and be a thing, that club closed. There was nowhere really to put on any heavy shows. And I started managing Goreaphobia, which also was kind of like a weird fluke because I'd never managed bands before, but I was managing a rock shop down on South Street. And
was that Rock and Roll
I went,
Plus or is that a different
yeah,
one?
it was called Rock and Roll Plus.
Yeah.
And it was right across the street from a Tower Records. And so there wasn't really any point in selling mainstream stuff there because people would just go right into Tower Records. So I started selling underground and imports and, like Napalm Death and Carcass 7 inches and, death metal stuff and even early black metal. I remember I was the record buyer, so I could buy whatever I wanted. But, you know, I met Chris and Alex from Goreaphobia, and they were, telling me about their band. They gave me the demo because I would carry demos in the store too from local bands.
Okay.
And and I said, I don't even know like where it came from, but I said, Well, I manage bands and I really didn't, but I figured I could. Like, I knew how to, um, promote shows because it was something that I had been involved in for a long time. Like, all my friends were musicians, were in bands. I was, um, at the time, people I were hanging out with was that band Anvil Bitch,
Yeah.
so
Classic.
yeah, so that was my crowd. That's who I hung out with. And they evolved into a band called Dominance.
Yeah.
My roommate Janice, that
Yeah.
she was dating the bass player from Anvil Bitch and Dominance,
Hmm.
and so that was our crowd. And I just watched what their manager did, and I helped. I would go out flyering, and stuff like that. But I wanted to manage bands. So I said, I manage bands. And, I figured if I managed a store, I could manage a bunch of boys. But,
It's
it
not
actually
quite that
wasn't the
easy.
same. But the first thing, it was like, okay, I need to find places for them to play. That's the most important thing.
Hmm.
And I don't know, somehow I found G Willikers. It had a different name. It had just changed. It didn't have a booking agent. Somebody might have turned me on to it and said, "There's this. You remember that club so and so? It's now called G Willikers over in Pensacola. They're looking to book bands." And so I went over and I met the owner, Dottie, and I said I wanted to do a show, and with Goreaphobia and Immolation and Dominance. I had just met the guys from Immolation, so I figured I would bring them down from New York. We'd have Dominance, which was the local thrash band, and my friends. Put Goreaphobia on there, and I did the show, and I had a really good turnout. A couple hundred people.
Yeah.
Um, and Dottie, the owner of the club, was just like, "Do you want to do another show? Can you do another show?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do more shows." And then after doing a couple more shows, she just put me in charge of doing all the booking for the club. And so, there were times when I was doing, 3 or 4 shows a week. I would do a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes only 2 shows. Um, and it only took me 6 months from when I first started, booking all of the East Coast bands before I got an offer for a national tour. And so then I started doing national shows too.
When was that Immolation Gorephobia show? Was that
It was April 11th, 1990.
April? Okay, yes, that's
And
about three
and
months or something before we play there.
yeah,
Did we
and
play with Nuclear Death? I think, or was it? No, it was with.
Demolition Hammer. It was Apparition. And I think Dominance might have actually canceled on me.
Yeah,
Like, I put them on the show, but I think they something happened, they couldn't play. And but like a lot of them showed up, like, the
yeah.
friends and the followers of them and everything.
Well, what was the first like national act that you had there? Which one was that?
That was Death and Carcass.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that one. Yeah, that was legendary.
Yeah, so I started. I might have had a show. I might have did my first show in March. I don't remember. And then I remember that April 11th show because
Yeah,
I have video. There's video of that
yeah. I don't
from my
remember if
house
I went to that
after.
one or not. I remember going to G Willikers pretty early, but I don't remember. I don't remember if I was at that show. Probably I was if Immolation played and Gorephobia because I liked both bands at the time. But yeah, I remember the show I remembered first time being there, or at least playing there was the was it Dream? I mean, not Dream. Was Nuclear Death? I think. Was it the Nuclear Death show? It was like Mortician, Incantation, Nuclear Death. I can't remember. It's too long ago. It's
I
funny.
know. And you know what? I have my flyers, but I'm gonna pull them up. Because most of the flyers I
Yeah.
have are on my I have a folder on Facebook. So what
Yeah.
I'll do is I'll pull them up, and I should have done this ahead of time. And then I can hold them up. That's why, because I'm on my laptop and I wanted to do it that way in case, you
Oh,
know,
okay. Yeah.
use my phone for something.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's like once the first couple of shows, like I had to like Chris and Alex really turned me on to um like a lot of bands, like right away, like when the first show was a success, they were like, okay, you should bring this band and that band and that and this band.
Yeah.
Like I knew the New York bands and I was in touch with all you guys like right away, after meeting um Immolation. I met them guys at the end of 1989 and I actually met them in New York. Um I drove up to show in New Rochelle.
Oh,
And
Streets.
yeah, Streets,
Great
and it was
place.
Death was playing,
Oh, yeah.
and Primeval opened
Yes.
up.
Great band too.
So I had seen them, and I got in touch with them right away to bring them down for a show. Um, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you gotta, this band, you gotta meet this band, you gotta bring this band, you gotta bring that band."
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it like Nuclear Death kind of was a little bit of an anomaly because they were from so far away, until they started like national tours. They're on tour, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. The
But
Nuclear
for
Death one was more
bands,
them just booking shows
yeah,
themselves.
travel so far and they only get like one or two shows. It's a lot of money and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's why I used to let the bands stay at my house. And that's where all those legendary parties come from because I understood that this is an underground level. They don't have any financial backing. Didn't really make a lot of money at the shows. I mean, I tried to, pay people, but I really didn't have control of the money. That was the owner. And, so she would dole out, whatever payment, was. And I barely even got paid.
Yeah.
I was lucky if I, made back. She always paid me out my expenses. So, if I like any flyers or anything like that I made, she would pay me out that. But she always had like some kind of excuse.
Of course.
Oh, there wasn't enough people to tour. I had to pay this, pay that, But
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the bands, you guys were really cool about it. Like you didn't complain too much about like, hey, where's my pay?
We
there
were
might
just
have been
happy
a
to
lot of
play.
times where I didn't even promise any pay. I'm like, you're doing it for exposure. You come, you play, you'll get exposure, you
Well,
know.
we were all pretty. It was pretty early on for everyone anyway, So we were just happy to get out there and do these killer shows. It was. I mean, it was great bands to play with. I had so many great underground bands. From all over. I remember Rochevore had probably even like Corpse Grinder. I think probably
Yeah,
played some shows. His shows with Deceased from all the areas.
yeah.
Bands would always come around to play. It was great.
Ex Mortis
Yeah,
from
Ex Mortis. Yeah.
Maryland. I had like all the New York bands, more you
Yeah.
guys, Mortician,
Yeah.
and multiple times too. Like I would bring you back every couple of months.
Yeah, for sure.
Immolation played quite a few times. And even before they got signed, I had Malevolent Creation played,
Yes.
Cannibal Corpse played.
Yeah.
I think Cannibal had just gotten signed, but they didn't really have any backing. And I think the show might have been something like they were traveling from Florida to New York to meet with, the record label and, people. And um, they just thought they'd do a couple shows along the way. So it wasn't like a tour or anything. It was just, they just booked a couple shows.
Yeah, I remember. I think that was it was supposed to be with DSI, but ended up not being with DSI, I think. I can't remember.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think it was like some kind of like little short tour thing that
Yeah,
it wasn't even like I didn't get a contract for it. It wasn't really. I think the record labels advertised a little bit, but it wasn't like an official tour or
yeah,
anything. Um, so
yeah. Well, I mean, there's definitely. I mean, G will. I mean, there's so many, yeah, great shows at the time. I mean, I remember going, man, for a while. It was like almost every freaking weekend. I think, you
yeah,
know,
I did get do a show like every weekend.
and then
Very,
even like the when you start doing more national acts, we would see him in New York. Maybe we see him in upstate New York somewhere. And then we go down to, either G Willikers or, if it was a bigger show, go to Trock or something. But,
yeah,
it was kind of all same scene or whatever, pretty much. And you guys used to come up a lot too with
yes,
Goreaphobia to shows all the time too.
yes, yeah,
But
yeah. I used to travel for shows all the time, so we would go see a tour. We'd see it 3 or 4 times. I mean, sometimes depending on how, where they played. We'd go to Baltimore, Philly, New York, Allentown, Poughkeepsie.
yeah,
We were
even
just
Rhode Island, there was that one show. I think
yeah, well, that was um Disharmonic Orchestra, wasn't it?
oh yeah, it was with the Philharmonic Orchestra.
And
Yeah.
Vital Remains. And so then I
Yes.
brought Vital Remains down to and Phlegm down to G
Yeah.
Willikers.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was
Yeah, that was see, that was like this harmonic orchestra contacted me. Somebody, somehow they got my contact info and they're like, we want to come to America and play a few shows. So we're booking, we were told you're the one to contact.
yeah, that was
He
crazy.
was,
I mean, yeah, they just came over and just did those few shows. That's awesome.
I don't know if you can you see it? That's
Uh yeah, you can see it a little bit. It's a little
the
washed out, but it's pretty good. Yeah.
yeah, that's nuclear death, Goreaphobia, Mortician, and Nocturnal.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That was a fly. That artwork was
August
Phil's artwork.
23rd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I had I had Hellwitch.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So that was probably 1990. Let me see if I'll find an incantation one.
Yeah, I don't that's right cuz that Nuclear Death one was when I played with Mortician. I knew I played the show, but I forgot that it was with Mortician, not Incantation.
Yeah. Here's one. Um
Oh, Fatal played. Yeah.
Fatal Primeval Ex Mortis and Goreaphobia, June 2nd.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, Here's
That
the
was cool.
August 26th. So that nuclear death show was only a couple days away from the death carcass show.
It's crazy that you were able to do so many freaking shows even close to each other. Because there's all kind of the same crowd, but I think that people were just hungry to go to shows back then. It was just like almost like an overload of like awesome shows.
Yeah. Well, I don't even think like you couldn't even like you guys couldn't even play like barely in New York. New York wasn't
Oh,
even
it
doing
was tough to do shows. For us to get on any kind of show that was more than a local show, it was really difficult. The only option we had was Studio One because we proved ourselves at that club. But when it comes to city, impossible. They just weren't interested in having us play. You know,
yeah, so there was that like streets place and then
yeah. They played
But yeah, I
Streets.
mean, I was
Immolation got
doing
us on
more
that.
shows in Pensacola, New Jersey than was happening in New York. And DC, Baltimore, there was nothing happening down there.
Hardly
There was
anything.
there was a club in Wilmington, Delaware, that was doing some heavy shows. Um
Yeah,
there
I
was a
don't
band,
think I ever went to that.
Solitude, that I booked, and they were from the Wilmington area, and so I would bring my bands down and play there a few times. Deceased was able to play there. And then there was that. Do you remember? I did an afternoon show down on South Street at a place called JC
Yeah, I
Dobbs.
remember. I have that on video. That JC Dobbs show. Yeah,
Yeah, that was like
it was just
it was like an experiment, I think.
yeah,
Which like I it worked out good. I mean, I think we had a pretty good crowd there, even though it was an afternoon show.
yeah,
But I guess that Dobbs wasn't interested in, doing it again. It was a one-time deal.
yeah.
You know,
I,
let's try this out, whatever. Because they didn't want to do it was like G Willikers was all ages.
oh
Um,
yeah,
so the bar was in a separate room.
that's right.
So that's how I was also able to do really good crowds like that, because of the fact that the bar was in a separate room. So
Yeah,
you couldn't get in the bar if you weren't 21. Of course, you couldn't see the bands if wanted
you're
to drink
drinking.
all
Yeah,
night. You had to leave the bar to see the band. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, but
Well, at that time, we were
yeah, I
just
mean,
happy to have a place to play. It wasn't the perfect club, but it was fine for what it was. It was
yeah,
they pretty much it seemed like they pretty much gave you the option to do whatever you wanted there. Almost
free reign.
yeah, free
Yeah,
range or
no,
whatever.
I definitely had free reign. I could just book whatever I wanted. I mean, I did, other besides death metal shows. Like I had Biohazard there for like one of their first shows ever
Hmm.
out in New York
I remember you
City.
had Repulsion before they were typo
Typo
negative.
negative.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah,
And they were only called Repulsion for a couple of months because
yes,
of the band's Michigan,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, they changed it, the typo negative, right? They did the demo and it was said repulsion on a demo, but then, yeah, obviously they changed it for, they didn't want to get
Yeah, but they were
confused.
still called Repulsion when I did the show, because I
Yeah.
had the flyer, and I remember, former members of Carnivore,
Yes. Yeah. That was awesome. I remember that show.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was awesome.
Uh,
You know.
yeah. So, yeah, a lot, like you said, a lot of these shows, basically the bands would go to your place after the show. And, I know from the shows we played and went to the parties afterwards. I mean, it was pretty insane. Things definitely got pretty crazy. I know your neighbors were probably super excited about.
I'm sure they hated me. I don't even remember what they looked like, and I don't even remember if I ever spoke to any of them. But we did have the cops at our house a lot. They should have known what they were in for when we moved in. We moved in on Halloween day, right?
Yeah.
We were supposed to move in November 1st, but we got the keys on Halloween the day before, and we started moving in on Halloween. And when my one roommate Joe Cos pulled up in his van, he was blasting Carnivore like really really loud. Like I remember that me and Janice were sitting on the steps waiting for him and out front, and he just pulled up blasting Carnivore, and right there I was just like I kind of like in a way I was like, turn it down. Like, do
Yeah.
you want the neighbors to hate us from the get-go? you know but there was nothing you could do about it. I mean, we were crazy crazy partiers. I mean, we were in our 20s, and it was, a couple people, I think like Janice, it was her first time, um, living away from home with her parents. I'd had a couple apartments before that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, Janice was a hellraiser.
oh, she totally was. She totally was.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was crazy. She was like, you know, she was actually really famous. She was like the grunge queen in Philly.
Oh yeah.
Because that club, JC Dobbs, when I wasn't doing shows at G Willikers, I mean, I was going out. We were going out like every night, 4 nights a week. I mean, we'd start on Thursday night, or if there was a show somewhere. Um, we'd go to, the punk shows down on South Street at Dobbs, and Dobbs did national acts too. I saw Nirvana at that club,
Oh
Dobbs.
wow. Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. Um, but Janice was like the grunge queen of Philadelphia. Like I was the death metal queen and she was the grunge queen. So she would come to my shows, but she didn't come to all of them.
Yeah.
If I wasn't doing a show and I wasn't busy, like, on tour with one of the bands, I was hanging out on South Street all the time too. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember one. I can't remember what show it was, but I remember one night after a party. It might have even been that crazy one that with deceased and stuff, with driving down the stairs and everything. That I remember waking like I was sleeping on your like I don't know your not your kitchen floor, but kind of like your dining room floor,
Uh-huh.
because everybody was just sprawled out everywhere, and I think um I think Janice cracked an egg on my head while I was sleeping.
She would do shit like that.
I woke up to
I
like an
think it
egg
was
cracked on my head.
the night since that show at JC Dobbs. It was Deceased, Incantation, and Goreaphobia, and it was an afternoon show. So at 6 o'clock we were done, right? We had a keg or two. It was already, planned,
Yeah.
back at my house. Usually the parties didn't start that early.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
started.
usually it was like 3 in the morning probably or something
Yeah.
because we
Well,
get
the shows at G Willikers, I think the curfew was for the bands, like for the what was 11,
oh,
you
was it? I
know.
forget. Yeah.
And yeah, so the shows would be like 7 to 11, like 4 hours or whatever. Like doors are at 6, shows were like 7 to 11 because it was all ages. There was a curfew.
Oh, yeah.
The bar didn't close, but we barely ever went in the bar. Like we would, when the show was over, we would go back to my house because I would always, after the first few times of going back there and letting the bands stay and everything like that, we would get a keg and the keg would be ready back at the house and
Yeah.
everybody head over it. And it was crazy because we're talking like sometimes a couple hundred people. Like there was times when 50, 60 people slept over my house and they were everywhere, like, under the table, in the dining room, all over the dining room, on every chair, couch. I used to have that giant king size bed, if
Yeah.
you remember, because there were so many people, they'd be in every room partying, But that king size bed, we used to put like 8 people in that bed. Like 8 people just pile in that king size bed. They were like laying, both
Yeah.
ways, down the bottom,
On the floor.
sideways and going up the other way, you
Well,
know.
everyone's just passed out from drinking, and
Yeah,
partying.
but we used to stay up a lot. Like sometimes we'd stay up all night and then we wouldn't go to sleep until the sun was coming up. Yeah. That night, that night after that early show at Dobbs was a particularly crazy night. And that was the night that they were diving down the steps. And somebody has video of that,
Yeah.
but
I s
I haven't seen it yet. Like it's
yeah,
not posted.
yeah, I never seen it posted anywhere. Someone showed me the video though. It has like King Folly was like saying like some stuff like this one goes out to, Piggy from Voivod or something, and he would just just jump
Die.
right down the stairs. It was
Yeah,
insane.
like dive off the top of the stairs, land in the middle and just and like I can't believe that they didn't get hurt. And then people started following him, and it was like the craziest thing, Blump, 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 blump down the stairs. And he also, I had these slippers. They looked like bear claws, like
Yeah.
bear claw feet. And I got tiny feet. He shoved his big feet in them slippers. And so he was diving down the steps with the bear claw slipper, you know? And I think also we were playing drinking games in the dining room. And I specifically remember um, they used to get really loud, like pong or whatever, beer pong and all those different games. I remember you being like at the head of the table and at one of the nights that we were playing beer pong, and like everybody was just screaming at the top of their lungs.
Yeah.
There
You
was
know.
one show was also with Deceased. Now Deceased was cool because they would bring a caravan. Cool in one way, but not cool in the other way because I couldn't fit 100 extra people from the DC area in my house. But they would bring it. They brought their people with them, and so they'd have a caravan every time that they came, and when they played, and they would also come to the other shows that they weren't playing.
Yeah.
So at any given time at G Willikers, we had people from Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York.
Yeah. All the
Now,
time. I mean, I
like
remember.
every weekend, people traveled to them shows because they were so,
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a great place for us to just get to know other band members from other bands, because I mean, yeah, I remember Mark and George Fisher used to come up from Corpse Grinder quite a lot to the shows. We met them, in person through that, and it just seemed like there was always somebody new or somebody that we knew from either we were right someone we wrote to that we see meet in person there, or somebody we didn't know that we would see there and stuff. It was really a fun time. And it was just a great way to like, especially for all of our bands at that time, to kind of network and stuff. It's before the internet, so you have to like either write people or you have to see them at shows and stuff. But it would be great because yeah, having like bands like Ex Mortis play, like I love that band, and I remember getting to meet them and stuff over there and hanging out. And I remember he brought over like what Rochervor out there, a bunch. I
Uh
mean, from
huh.
everywhere. I mean,
Crucifier.
yeah, Crucifier. Yeah, the local band. They were a great
Uh
one.
huh.
Was it Hazarax? Was it?
Hazarax was another band I
Yeah,
managed
local.
after I started with Goreaphobia. I picked up Hazarax and and then I was managing a band called Damnability, which was like a
Oh, I remember them. Yeah, yeah,
speed metal band. So I would do like when I did shows, I didn't book them on the death metal shows because they weren't really death metal. And so there were nights when I did like these, like thrash and speed metal shows also, and they did really well. But you guys didn't really show up. You didn't come to those, just the death metal ones.
yeah. We mostly came to death metal or grindcore type show.
Yeah. But yeah, George Fisher, he came to a show early on, and once he knew he could stay at my house, he was there every weekend. Like people just don't know, like they see pictures, right?
Yeah,
Now,
a little George Fisher, right?
yeah, he was always tall, but he was real
Tall and
skinny,
skinny. Yeah,
and he used to wear that fishing cap. Do you remember that hat?
yes,
Right?
yes.
And like people are like when they see the videos, because some of the videos are posted online, and they're like, "Is that George Fisher? Oh my God, he has a neck." You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. It's funny because yeah, you look at George Fisher now. I mean, you can still tell it's him, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's just so his physique is so different. It's just really funny too. people really get a kick out of seeing a young George Fisher,
Yeah. Or how about Bob Vigna with hair?
Yeah, yeah, for
Like
sure.
I don't there's probably not many people that remember Bob with hair,
Yeah, I
you
know. Yeah,
know?
I know.
But yeah, Bob used to have long hair, you know?
Yes.
He
Yeah.
did.
And talking about Immolation, Immolation was one of those. It ended up, at least in my eyes, became kind of like, I don't know, just I mean, obviously I was good friends with them, but it just seemed like we really got along good with the Philly crew and Immolation and the Incantation camp, and just it just to me they were one of the at that time great success stories because they were the first band to get out of the death metal bands get signed to a Roadrunner. And I remember it was just really everybody was excited for him because at that time everybody was looking at it like this is like one of us, like one of our kind of our crew that got signed to a big label. And at that time, it was a big difference from getting signed now. Like back then, bands don't get signed to labels so easy. Now it's easier for people to get signed to somebody. But back then, especially for a death metal band like Immolation to get signed to Roadrunner was just like, holy crap. It just felt like it was just a great success. I remember we even had a party for them when they got signed. I seen photos with the cake and stuff reminded
Yeah,
me of
dude,
that.
that cake, yeah. That was actually it was from a bakery that's still right around the corner from me. Like it's like 2 blocks from where I live right now. And it's Kim, it was it's her family's bakery that
Oh,
like our cousins
mm-hmm.
and uncles and aunts run that bakery. And she did the logo, Kim herself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she went there and says, "Okay, we need this cake, but I need this logo," and and she did it, and it came out pretty good.
Yeah, it was great.
Um, I should have had all these pictures ready. I could show them. Um, uh, some, but yeah, we surprised them with that. They didn't know that was coming. They thought they played at G Willikers, and they thought, okay, we're just going back for the regular, party after party at Annie's house. And we surprised them with the cake. They were
Yes.
they were really, really like blown away. But like how you mentioned like how everybody got along, there was really something special that happened
Yep.
at G Willikers. Because like right now, like what is it? 30 years later,
Yeah.
I am still friends with a lot of those people, and
Yeah.
not just band people, but the people that came to the shows. Like
Yeah.
I still see them out sometimes, but I'm friends with them on Facebook, and like it was definitely like a moment in time, like lightning in a bottle kind of
Yeah.
thing. That doesn't happen a lot, you know, of how special it was
Absolutely.
and rare, and how everybody, like when you think about like nobody fought, like we
Nope.
didn't really like every once in a while you get a
Yeah, a
drunk
little thing here and
oh,
there, but nothing
yeah,
really.
but like there were like no people didn't fight. There was no animosity. Everybody was just so happy and into it, and
We all
everybody made friends, and it was like lifelong friends,
Yeah,
like
we all
lifelong.
supported each other, and it was a good vibe because it didn't feel like it's a lot of times with bands it's easy to have like competition and get that kind of band competition stuff, but I never felt that in any of the people that I met from that G Willikers scene and stuff. It seemed like we were all just really supportive of each other and really wanted to see everybody do well. Like it was just like, I mean, almost all the bands that I remember seeing, they were all great bands, and but it was just we were happy to see things going good. It was like you wanted the scene to get bigger because that time there was no guarantee that no one knew how death metal was going to be now, or it was ever going to get big. We were all kind of just looking at it like we're just happy that we have a place where we can enjoy playing the music that we like playing, and be around people that understand or appreciate what we want to do. I mean, I know that the energy we got from all those people, I know, helped Incan out as a band. It just gave us a place where we could really just be ourselves and just really get, kind of get our chops down and stuff playing, and having that support of you know, bands and fans coming to the show that really like early on really liked our stuff and appreciated it. I can say it I say it from my point of view.
Yeah, and everybody just wanted to be with people that were like them and like the same thing. And I think it was also a little bit of a like almost like, wow, I can't believe this kind of thing too. This is so awesome.
Yeah.
Like look at all these people. We're all in the same thing. I think that it was like everybody, we never thought like it was like also living for the moment because he thought this can't last,
Oh, yeah.
growly vocals,
Yeah.
this crazy, this
I know.
crazy
Yeah, I
formation
thought 5 years
of
max.
music, like this ain't gonna last. So let's have fun and be supportive, while we can because this like it was almost like I said, we couldn't believe like how it was going over and how much fun we were having and how many great bands were out there you know, and like I mean, I never would have thought that 30 years ago that death metal would still be relevant and it
No.
would spawn all these other like, sub genres and stuff,
Crazy.
and also the other really really special thing about G Willikers that I mean, this is why I got to write my book, and I think maybe this video interview might you know do let people know exactly how it was because I recently watched a documentary on the Bay Area bands. It was really good, where the
Yeah.
home club where Exodus played and all those bands all played in that club. It's kind of the same. G Willikers is on the same level as that. I mean, of course, them thrash bands are all a little bigger, sell more records,
Yeah.
but you guys have all played together. You should played on festivals together, with Testament and Exodus and Slayer and
Yeah.
you know all those bands. But that's what you could compare it to because mostly all the bands that played at G Willikers like got signed, and
Yeah.
a lot of them are still signed
Yeah.
and still playing and still touring and touring Europe and playing big festivals. You,
Yeah.
right? Your band, Incantation, Immolation,
Yeah. Deceased.
still relevant, still playing tours, still putting out albums. Um, I like a lot of these bands that came through, Malevolent and
Yep.
Cannibal Corpse, they're still playing. They're still signed. They're
Yeah. Yeah.
um
I remember you had Bolt Thrower play there with Sacrifice, I think Believer tour, I think you did.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Man.
one of my last shows at G Willikers. Um and we can get to that, the last one, but yeah, it like a lot of the bands, so many of those bands got signed and
You had
um
Suffocation.
Suffocation, yeah, we
Forgot about them. Yeah.
keep forgetting to say yeah, because I had them quite a few times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like so many of them got signed and are still together and still making music and still touring and still bringing in crowds, playing big festivals in Europe and stuff like that. And it's like 30 years later, and it's like music is still so intense and all of you's like really just still got it, you know what I mean, like that energy. It's like none of you's lost that energy. When I before this pandemic I saw you a couple of times, saw Incantation,
Yeah.
One was on that the Dark Funeral and Belphegor tour,
Yeah.
and then one was on the Obituary tour.
It
And
was Morbid Angel
no, Morbid
Watain.
Angel. That's right, Morbid
Yeah.
Angel, and yeah,
Watain.
and Watain. I'm telling you, you sounded so good that night.
Oh, well, thank you.
You blew me away. Me and Kim were down on the floor, like right up front. And I just said to Kim, I'm like, this is probably one of the best times like I've ever seen Incantation. Like you sounded so good. The sound mix was perfect. And
Oh,
it was
awesome.
so good. I was just like, I can't believe, like so many years later, and I can't believe how great he sounds, they
Well,
sound.
yeah. Well, it's great for us. I mean, you know, it always, I mean, it's great that we're still doing well as a band. I totally appreciate it. But, when people from, back in the day come up to me after the show and you give me compliments on the show, and, can kind of tell when it's sincere and not sincere. And, I really appreciate it because it means a lot because, there's a really special feeling about those early days. And I think, even now it's like of course we moved on as a band, did what we had to do, but we always try to still keep that core reason why we're doing it, and we want to keep the band really earthy. And I think it's very similar to watching a band like Immolation play too. It's like you see them play and it just like it brings happiness to me when I see them play and do well, because it's like these are part of our old crew back in the day. These are my buds, and it's so nice
Yeah,
to see them do well. There's something really special about seeing people that you were there from the early days and supported, and then to see them do well now is it's just something. I don't know how to explain it. It's just a great feeling. It's like it's like that same feeling when Immolation got signed. We were really happy for their Roadrunner contract and stuff like that. We felt like it's one of us. But it's crazy because even when I see Immolation play now and they're on some great tour and kicking ass, I still have that feeling like it's one of us.
yes,
Because it's like it comes from the same core. I mean, yeah, our bands are different, but it's like more of a friendship core, more of a fighting in the underground at the same time. Before there was like now it's easier, now it's acceptable to be death metal. We were doing death metal, people were, most people had no clue to what we were doing except for this hardcore group of people.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Because I remember, it was like, there was Morbid Angel,
Yes.
Death, and like the demos were still trickling in, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and and then the very early, that the Stockholm
Yeah.
band,
Yeah.
from Europe, and Entombed and Unleashed,
Yeah,
and
Dismember. Yeah.
yeah, so and I mean there really wasn't a lot of, you know, like bands. I mean, there's millions of death metal bands now.
Yeah. Yeah, and back then too it was I thought the scene I like about the early scene is, since it was really fresh, there was, even though okay there was some stylistic similarities in some of the areas, overall I thought there was still a lot more diverse in each band, where you listen to it and it kind of sounds like their own thing. It's not to slag on, say, modern death metal, but it's harder now to have their own identity because so almost everything's been done, and most of the way
Yeah,
that these bands find identity is sometimes by mixing things that I don't know if it's the best idea to mixing with death metal. For me, I mean, I'm just more of a elitist purist anyway. I've kind of always been that way. But I mean, I think it's great
I
though.
am a little bit too.
But I think it's great that there's newer generations of bands playing death metal and that are influenced by some of us earlier bands. I mean, as a musician and songwriter, as I speak for myself, it's a honor, that people would use me as some sort of influence or use the band or something we've done. So I totally appreciate it. I never would have thought I would be in this position now as a musician. It's pretty insane, because to me, I always look at myself as that still that, you know, punk kid back in, the early 90s, just wanting to do what he wants to do and telling the world to kind of piss off kind of thing. I can't help it. That's always part of who I am, no matter how old and experienced I get.
There was speaking of suffocation, there was, I think, the most craziest. And I don't think that you were there that night, but I think it was the most craziest party that I had at my house, and
Hmm.
it was after a show with Deceased and Suffocation, and Ed Varsity was there because I have a picture of him,
Yeah.
sitting on the couch next to King Fowley, and that was a ton. The cops came like 3 times, and the
No,
last
sure.
time they came, um, they they said they were going to arrest everybody, but they kicked everybody out of my house, like everybody, and because they were like taking names, like what's your name, and the person was like, I live in Virginia, and the next one's like, I live in New York, and I remember the cop saying, is there anybody from Philadelphia here? You know, and I ran out the back door in I think I had like a little dress on, a little like baby doll dress and stockings. I'd taken my shoes off, and ran out the back door. And I heard the cops had their spotlight from the car, and they were looking on the roofs because they could not believe, because the cop said, as soon as I get everybody's name and address here, he's like, you're getting arrested, because he knew I was the one that was renting the house.
Yeah.
And I just remember I kind of slipped out the back door and ran away, and was like wandering the neighborhood, and like tearing up the feet in my pantyhose, um and the cops were looking for me on the roof. They thought I went out through the skylight. And Janice was sleeping in her room and wasn't partying that night. She was just sleeping. The cops went in and woke her up, and wanted to know, where's your roommate? She's like, how the hell do I know? I'm sleeping. You woke me up. And they could not believe they didn't see me like go like in the other room, like in the kitchen.
Yeah.
They swore I had to be on the roofs of the houses. No, they were had the spotlight up there. But after that, everybody scattered, and they all went away, and then everybody crept back real quiet. And I said, that's it. It was like 5 in the morning. I'm like, everybody just no more noise. Everybody just go to sleep. Lay down, be quiet. No more partying. But that was crazy.
Yeah. 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 I remember, yeah, many crazy nights over there for sure. I mean,
Did you go to the I did a backyard show
oh,
um
yeah.
with
I don't know didn't St. Vitus play or something? And,
and it was, well, Biohazard played,
yeah,
Hell Witch played.
yeah, hell, which I
But
was there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because I they were playing a couple days later at G Willikers. And
Where was that show at?
it was in Damned Abilities, that other band, that speed metal band. It was
Yeah.
in their backyard because they lived in Jersey and had this giant
Yeah. I
yard.
remember it was a place with a big yard. I just couldn't remember.
Yeah, and we had the flatbed tractor trailers for the
Yes.
stage that somehow they brought from the street, got them, in the driveway, and then turned them and got them into the yard. And it was a Biohazard played. It was a band from Philly called Dead Spot and Dominance, and Hell Witch played. Who else played that? Um that was crazy, but that was another thing where it's like 400 people like in somebody's yard, you know,
Yeah.
at the show. But that was also during the day. It was over early, and I had a big party back at my house. And there's pictures. There's one picture that Alex like that keeps coming up like in Alex's like timeline on
Yeah.
Facebook, and it's from that weekend.
Oh, is that the one?
Also, Warrant, because Immolation was there. The Immolation guys came down for it, and I think that was when Laurent,
Oh,
um,
yeah. He
from
was visiting.
Listicle,
Yeah.
he came. He was visiting. So he was over there, and I just remember there's like this picture of Barbara is in it, and I'm in
Mhm.
it, and Neil and Bob and Ross and I think Ted from Ex Mortis,
Yes.
because he was another one like that would come every weekend, like Ted and George, Corpse Grinder would come every weekend.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of people don't know, where he got his name from, but he actually was in a band called Corpse Grinder
Yes.
back then. And then, when he switched over to Cannibal Corpse, he was George Corpse Grinder.
Yeah, because I think he was still going by George Fisher when he was in Monstrosity, I think. Or did he go Corpse Grinder? I can't remember, but I know in Cannibal he went under Corpse Grinder. I forget. With the G Williker stuff, he said what that Bolt Thrower show was the last show there. When was that one?
That was in 92.
Okay.
Yeah, 92. Because it was only a couple years. Like I said, it was lightning in a bottle. It didn't last. It didn't by 92, it had gotten bigger. And so like I had my first national show was the Death and Carcass. And then I started doing more national shows because bands were getting signed, you know. I mean, after Immolation got signed, they never played a show with me again. So that was kind of like the downside
Oh.
of them getting signed is, they didn't ever play a show again. Um, but I did like I had Malevolent there. I did end up doing a tour with Deicide. Um I did Napalm Death.
Yes.
Um and who were they
Was that
with?
with a Nocturnus?
Nocturnus, yeah.
Yeah.
I did that show. And then I did Sepultura
Yeah.
and Obituary. And that was the best show I ever did. Then that was the only show that I really made any money on. Like I actually made money. Like I think the capacity of the room, because it was a small club, like you were saying, right? It was probably 325, but that these small clubs always stuff in more than
Yeah.
as many as they can, you know. And so that was I mean, we were regularly doing like 250 to 300 just for like little local shows, you know what I mean? And then there would be 3 to 400 when I started doing the
Yeah. National
national
X.
acts. But that Sepultura show was over 500 people.
Yeah.
Over 500. There was so yeah, I mean, like that was just all around like worked out for everybody. Dottie, the owner, was really happy.
Yeah, I'm sure.
She made a lot of money that night. I actually got paid. All the bands got paid. Everybody got paid. The sound man, because the sound man, like even the sound man, the his name was Gary, and he was friends with Damnability. And like he basically was volunteering his time, early on.
Yeah.
Like he was just trying, I think, to learn how to do it because, it was that same camaraderie thing where everybody, you know, like you guys very early on, like you're unknown or whatever, and we're taking this chance, and you weren't really getting paid to play, and he wasn't getting, he was like basically working for
E-
free or or Dottie might have given him $25 or something.
Yeah, everyone's pretty much
But
just
it was
trying
because
to get their craft.
learn, like
Yeah,
he wasn't no, you know, guy like had been doing it for a really long time and knew what he was doing, but he wanted to learn how to be a sound man because he wanted to work in the business, and that's kind of
yeah.
like, what it was. But I actually I had gotten approached to do the Morbid Angel Entombed and Unleashed tour.
Mm-hmm.
There was no way I could do it in G Willikers. It would that at that point, 2 years later now, 92. Um, it's Morbid Angel's pretty big. There, I mean, at least
Yeah,
for
they're going up and up at
genre
that time.
in the genre, and everybody knew Entombed and Unleashed, like they were the
Yeah.
Stockholm death metal sound was a big thing. We were talking about the Swedish bands,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great.
and I did that show. It was in conjunction with Dottie from G Willikers. She understood that um it would be good promotion once we came back to some of the smaller shows. If she was one of the investors, like she helped with the money
Yeah.
to do that Morbid Angel tour. Um, and because that was going to be a lot more expensive, of course. And so I booked the Trocadero because I think they came to me because the Trocadero had their own booker, but I don't think that they had passed on the tour. And so basically, the workaround was to work through me, and I had to rent the room, you
Yeah.
know, and it cost like $6,000 to put that show on, and I lost a lot of money on it, and it was all a matter of about 100 people.
But say it probably was a pretty packed show though. I know they played the Marquee in the city and it was packed pretty good.
Well, it should have been packed, but what happened was that the Sunday, going back to when the Empire was doing like
Mhm.
thrash shows in the 80s, Sunday was always all ages night in Philly. It was just a thing. Sunday were the all ages shows,
Mhm.
So I had a Sunday booked, Sunday show booked, because that's just when the all ages shows are on Sundays.
Mhm.
A little bit earlier start, curfew at 10 or whatever. I had the show booked for Sunday. I think it was like $1,000 deposit. I sent the deposit in. I got the contract signed. Um, I took everything like really literal. Like, um, I think I saw it. It actually was when you interviewed um recently the one guy from Unleashed, and he was talking about
Oh,
that
Anders,
tour.
yeah.
Yeah, and he was talking about that tour, and he's saying, "Yeah, we didn't get we it was it was horrible. We didn't get fed. Um,
Yeah.
like nobody fed us. We were, sleeping in a van. We got a hotel room once. But when he said, "Oh, nobody fed us," I took a little umbrage because but the catering bill for that show was $900. I fed them. I get they got like I thought to myself, you know what? If everybody else broke the contract and didn't feed them, I should have not fed them. It would have saved me $900, because I lost a couple thousand
but you're
dollars on
trying to
that
do the
show.
right thing though, you know?
Yeah, because that's how I am. But so but anyway, but so the last show, my last national show, and I think my last show altogether was that bowl thrower show at G Willikers, which was awesome too. I That was an awesome show.
Yeah, it was a great show. I remember that one for sure. So I was just thinking before we end the interview, I mean, for what you said, over it's been about 10 years that you were doing Metal Maniacs. You were
Yes.
writing for them. How did that come about? And just, tell me a little bit about, if- that part of your life, I guess.
Well, it actually goes back. It goes back to this the same time period. It was like the underground scene, and so and there was the zines, so all the zine writers would come to the shows too. So it'd be like Chris Forbes, and he's still going strong and doing his music thing, you know, metalcore
Yep.
and all different, zines. I hooked up with this Darren McCluskey, who would come to my shows, and he's in a doom metal band that I forget the name of right now, but they still play, and I think they're on a really small label, so they still put releases out. But he did a zine, and I started doing the zine with him. So um we put that zine together in that on that same dining room table, in that Marple Street house, the Marple Street Death House, or the Philadelphia Death House. That's what it's
Yeah.
called. It That house is actually thanked on one of the Sepultura records. It says, "Thanks to the Philadelphia Death House." Probably a Rise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the one right after Beneath the Remains, right?
Yep.
So so I hooked up with this guy that was doing a fanzine, and I guess he just asked me, "You want to help me with this fanzine?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll help you with the fanzine." So at the same time, I was like, booking shows and managing bands, and also writing a fanzine. And then I met Sophie, who is one of my dear, best friends.
Yeah.
She worked at Roadrunner Records,
Yeah. I remember.
and she had a zine called Delirium. So I was writing record reviews for her zine, and I got to be really close with her, um because she was the publicist, and I had booked quite a few Roadrunner bands, Sepultura, being one of them, and Obituary and Malevolent and Immolation, of course, were my friends. And um so I started writing for her zine, and then Chris Dick had a zine called Eclipse, if you remember that.
Yeah.
I wrote a few things for him, and then Marco Barbieri, that worked
Yeah.
for Century Media. He had a zine called Illiterature, and
Yeah.
or I wrote for that, and then I got the Pit magazine gig. So after I stopped booking shows, I was still working with bands, managing bands. So I was, like going on different, little jaunts around to shows in Rhode Island, and Baltimore and DC and Michigan, and all the death fests and stuff. Um and I was writing for fanzines, and it was just I got the Pit magazine gig towards the end of the 90s, and you know that was a pretty widespread magazine, and it was
Yeah.
glossy,
Yeah. It
you
was a good
know.
one. It was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Got out there good.
yeah.
I
And
I forget
and then
what was that girl's name that did it? I can't remember.
Wendy.
Wendy. Yeah, Wendy was always
Yeah,
really cool. She booked a lot of shows for us in that Colorado Springs area back in the day.
yeah. I wonder what happened to her.
Yeah, I haven't heard from her
I
in
had a really
ages.
good relationship with her until one of the Milwaukee Metal Fests that I went to. I got her to I split the room with her. She paid for it. And that's when I realized that she didn't sleep all weekend, and and she said, um I'll pay for your room. Like, I had a whole bunch of interviews set up that were going to be in her magazine, right? "I'll pay for your room, but you got to work at my booth." I'm like, "Okay, I'll work at your booth, but I'll give you like 4 hours on, Saturday afternoon, 4 hours on Sunday. I'm like, I said, I'm not gonna. I'm a writer. I don't work for your store. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I got interviews set up and everything. So, and I can't do both things, but she was really like really intense about like how you set up the merchandise in that booth. And I remember she's like, don't do it that way. Like start yelling at me like I was one of her employees, at her store. She had a rock shop
Yeah.
there,
I remember.
you know. I just remember throwing the shit down. I'm like, you do it yourself. I'm out of here. And I took off. I left. But that was the very end of this festival. I was helping her clean up and pack up. I didn't have to do that. I could have been off partying with everybody else. You know what I mean? And I was helping her pack up, and she was like, she didn't like the way what I was doing, or with the
Yeah, she had her way of
boxing
doing
or
it. She wanted
whatever.
it done her way. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, but because she was a tweaker. That's
Yeah.
why she was. I realized because I was like, she didn't sleep all weekend. I was sharing a room with her, and so
Yeah.
I wake up in the morning and there she is, like still like talking and partying. I'm like, have you been up all night? Anyway, but I was able to use all the zines and Pit magazine to get myself the gig at Metal Maniacs. I made a you know uh portfolio of all my writing. I photocopied it all and put it in a binder, and I sent it to, at the time it was Mike Greenblatt was the editor at the time.
Yeah.
I sent it to him, and it's right when I moved to New York too. I just moved to New York, and I said, I'm interested in writing for your magazine. And at the time, it was almost like a little bit of a bribe in a way, because was planning this trip to Stockholm. I was going to um, go in the studio with Dark Funeral. They
Okay.
were recording an album, and they invited me to come in the studio, and it was Peter Takrin's studio.
Okay.
And there was a lot of great albums made in that
Yeah, of
studio.
course.
I wanted to go in the studio, and then I had also right at that time, it was like, I was like, Dark Funeral was going in the studio, and at the exact same time too, both Marduk and Amon Amarth were having new albums coming out in the spring. Like I went to Scandinavia in the winter, February, like that's crazy. Um, but I from interviewing them bands before for Pit Magazine, I was able to contact them and say, I'm going to be, in Sweden from,
I see.
this time to this time. And can I interview you in person? And so I kind of mentioned when I sent my portfolio in to Mike Greenblatt that,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, I'm going in the studio with Dark Funeral and I can do a studio report for your magazine. And I can also, um, these two bands, Marduk and Amon Amarth, also have new releases coming out in the spring, and I could interview them also. And he was just like, "You're hired." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're hired. You know. So it was with Metal Maniacs. There's like a 2 month lead time.
Yeah.
So first of all, um, like I don't know if you remember, like it would be March, and then you would go to the newsstand to buy Metal Maniacs, and it would say May. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, May 1999, but it was March. You were buying it in March.
Yeah.
Okay, so that magazine that was on the newsstand in March, the the deadline for that was like December 31st.
Yeah. I know.
It
It
was,
was really
yeah,
crazy back then.
yeah. So it worked out. especially with the so I was going and doing the studio report with Dark Funeral, and I mean their record, and that was February, but the record wasn't coming out till like August or something, you know. So that was enough like time, to for the deadline and everything, and it ended up that it was actually the second magazine that I was featured in. The first one that came out was probably like June, the June issue or the July issue, and it came out at the end of May. So I was there in February. That magazine came out the end of May. It was dated for July. And that was also like right when both of those, like the Amon Amarth album and the Marduk album, were coming out in the summer also. So that's why a lot of times when you looked at uh Metal Maniacs, that there was some lag time. Like when you when you bought it on the newsstand, it was always kind of like 2 months after when those records came out, when you saw the record reviews and everything like that.
Yeah.
Um,
It was a pain. It was actually a pain in the butt the way it all got organized. You had to do stuff so far in advance. I know on the band side, there would have to be such a lead time for the release of your album if you want to set the release of your album the same time as the review in Metal Maniacs is going to come out. Because at that time, it was most important magazine for, like,
yeah,
for us, being on like Relapse or Necropolis, it was a big deal. So we'd have to organize our release date to when that issue is going to come out, which is like, 6 months in advance. You'd have to kind of have everything
yeah, you would
organized
have to
almost.
probably hold back, like it was probably ready, but you were holding it back
Yeah.
because because of the lead time with the magazine. It was like kind of like 4 months.
Yeah.
Um, but it kind of worked out because that those the first issue I appeared in, that the Monomarth and the Marduk stories were in that, and then the next month, like the August of that year, um, I got the full cover story with the Dark Funeral, like right off the
Awesome.
bat. I went like boom, full cover story, which you got a little extra money for when you
Oh,
got
yeah.
the
That's
cover
awesome.
story. And I was just, I mean, that was like, I was really proud of. I loved Metal Maniacs. I thought it was the best
Yeah.
um extreme, magazine. It gave a lot of it gave a lot of like space to the bands. Not like, I mean, there's a couple of magazines out right now. Unless you're on the cover of the magazine, you maybe
Sometimes
get,
you get a half page sometimes
yeah,
with a
half.
photo.
Yeah, exactly. But Metal Maniacs was like you would
Yeah.
get 3 and 4 page interviews.
Yeah. It's,
And
it's, it's a different time though, too. I mean, magazines are way more popular or more important back even in the early 2000s. It was still more important. It wasn't until, you know, yeah, closer to 2010 or something when it really started becoming less important because of the internet, unfortunately.
say hi.
It's like get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. He was getting ready to like climb up on it.
Yeah.
He was coming.
Cute.
So I was like, I gotta get rid of him. Um, but yeah, I mean, I loved writing for Metal Maniacs. That's why I didn't really do any writing after that. I wasn't interested like a lot of I never even asked, a few of our writers, they went to write for like Decibel, couple other magazines, but
Hmm.
I just nothing compared to Metal Maniacs. It was the greatest extreme metal magazine that ever lived. I don't care. Even when with the when you think of the European
Yeah.
mag too, like I think there was Metal Forces was a European magazine that was pretty cool. And what was the other one that's out of business now? I mean, so
Alright.
now they still Metal Hammer over there,
Yeah,
but yeah,
Krang and
I think
stuff.
Kerrang is
Art
still
Shock.
going. Yeah, I mean they're good, but I mean that Metal Maniacs was awesome. I loved writing for them, and I was really really sorry to what happened, and
Yeah.
it wasn't like it was kind of definitely nefarious how it happened too. Like they got bought out,
Yeah, that's what I heard.
and then it was, and Liz at the time, after Mike was Liz Chivarello,
Yeah.
and she was at a festival in Europe, like Finland, or basically like she went in and they just said, pack up your desks, magazine's over, it's done. Like they gave her like no notice at all. She couldn't even because I asked her if she would send like there's no good there should be, I don't know why there isn't, like an archive
Yeah, it
on
should be.
online of Metal Maniacs. Now I have, well, I haven't finished it, but I have mostly all of my articles, my own articles scanned,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, you should post them.
the cut with the covers, and they're on Facebook. I have a whole, they're
Oh,
all there. Like I sent you recently, I posted the one Incantation interview
yeah, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
on your Incantation fans Facebook page. But I just thought, like, if every one of the writers all took it upon themselves to scan their own articles,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you know,
Should be done for
we got them all
historical
together,
purposes.
and then we'd have the whole magazine. You know what I mean? We'd
Yeah.
have all the pieces, and then I mean somebody would host it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm
But
just
it's important to have that because it's as far as the metal history, it's historical, so it should be preserved digitally too, you know. But okay, well, as far as for the future, I know you're talking about maybe trying to do some kind of book or something, or something about the G Williker times. Is that something you're still working on? Or
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I got stuck on it. I had a bad year this last year. You would think, with COVID and lockdown and all this stuff, that I would have been able to,
it was
get some writing done. But health wise, I had like I didn't get COVID, believe it or not, and I had to, and I worked because the job I have is an essential job, so I didn't get to like sit at home and be bored like everybody else.
yeah,
I had to work.
yeah,
But I couldn't go out and do things like I usually do, like no shows, no movies, and so you'd think maybe I could have gotten, really um a lot of work done on the book, but I didn't. I got a little stuck. But some of it, because the format that I want to do with the book is I want to try to make people aware of what we had and how special it was, like that lightning in the bottle thing,
yeah.
with the early death metal. And so I thought like I would do um chapters where I, kind of talked about myself, but I'm not like a person, like I don't really like to talk about myself all the time, but but just where my influences came, how did I get into music, what my influences are, how I
Mm-hmm.
ended up,
Yeah,
I
the
just
setup.
told you how I ended up booking shows,
Yeah,
and then I wanted to include a real long interview with the most important bands that played, G Willikers, So I
mm-hmm.
wanted to have interview with you in the book, and an interview with Bob and Ross in the book, and interview somebody from Primeval, somebody from Deceased, like the
Yeah.
the major, like bands that were not national acts. A lot of you are now, but back then you weren't national acts,
Hmm.
that were there from the very beginning, because Primeval was one of the first bands
Yeah.
I ever booked. You guys, Immolation, they were one of the debut bands that I booked there,
Hmm.
you know. So I wanted to have interviews. And I also, like I said, I'm still friends with some of the people that just used to hang out there. And I got in touch with everybody and I sent them, I had like two set of basic questions, just basic questions. And then would want to do the interview at least with the bands like more in person or something so we could expand on those basic questions and stuff. Um so I got a lot of the questions back from like some of the other bands that didn't really make it but opened up a lot of the shows, and the big bands, the ones I really wanted to feature, never sent me back the questions. And that would be Bob and Ross and you, and like I talked to Phil from Malevolent, like he never sent them back.
Yeah.
um who else did
I
I
have to
send
make a
them?
note of that.
Yeah, like none of the bands, like the big bands, the ones I really want to feature,
Yeah.
sent them back. But I'm not blaming you guys for not writing the book. It's hard for me to like toot my own horn. Like I like to have credit where credit is due, you know.
Hmm.
Um, yes, I was a big part of the East Coast death metal scene from the very beginning. The people who know it are the people who matter to me. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't I every death metal book on the Barnes and Noble shelves, like I give all them people credit. Um, but you know, I'm just a big of as influencer as those people. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, that's
But I
part of the
just
reason why I
never
wanted
went
to do the
around like
interview.
tooting my own horn.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to do this interview because I know you're are an important part of the early scene, and a lot of people maybe in the newer generation might not know, that because there's it's easy to be, it's glamorous to be in the band or whatever, but there's all people behind the scenes making things happen, and you were, I mean, you were pretty high profile at the time, but
Yeah.
in the over time people don't always realize, how important it was. 'Cause I mean, obviously, without your help in the scene, these shows couldn't have happened. It's part of the DNA of a lot of almost all the death metal bands in New Jersey, New York, and in the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
Part of the DNA has to do with that connections that were made at shows that you were putting on. So
Yes.
it's an important part of the metal history, and I kind of,
People learned their chops playing, those
yeah,
early shows,
getting connections with people and stuff, and just,
Yeah, all those fanzine writers, like Ed Varsity used to
yeah,
come. He's still working in the business and putting
yeah,
shows on and stuff like that, and like I said, I think Chris Forbes is doing a podcast now, I think.
yeah,
And so he's still into it, and he's still, he still matters. But yeah, if somebody who is like 20 years old right now, that's 10 years after all this happened. So they don't know anything.
yeah,
And it's funny too, because you do get them looks when you go to shows. Like, I love going to shows and seeing that the music 30 years on is still viable and still
yeah,
means something and still drawing crowd. Like metal is something that's never been like faddish. It's not a fad. It's had its waves where it's been kind of big and then it goes down and kind of, but it's always there. Metalheads are always metalheads. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So I like when I go to a show and I'm going to see my friends. I'm going to see Incantation and I'm going to see Immolation, and I see 15 and 20-year-olds in the crowd. I'm like, somebody had teach them about this, like, or how do they find it on their own, I mean, I had the 80s. 80s were full of metal. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? The 90s, but I mean, you can't even it's hard to find like it's something you really like how do you find it,
I
like these
know.
days,
It's a diff
know?
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I don't always understand how. I mean, it's great that metal's really big now, but it's I don't even understand how it all comes together because, it's so yeah, we had a good fundamentals. I mean, the whole 80s starting up to the early 90s was like full of metal. Metal was everywhere. I mean, it
On
was
the
very
TV.
dangerous. Yeah, you
Yeah.
know.
I mean, there's bands. Yeah.
But anyway, I want to thank you very much for the interview. I totally appreciate it.
I want to thank you for doing the interview. It was fun.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I mean, there's, so many great memories from back then. And I know I speak for, all the bands that played for you and went to the parties. We thank you very much for everything that you've done for the metal scene. Um, it's memories that all of us are going to have, for the rest of our lives. And we definitely, as far as myself, I do want to, document everything. Maybe I'm at a point in my life where I'm thinking about trying to make sure that things from my past are known to newer generations. So it's really cool. And besides that, I just want to let everybody know that, support, bands in a time like this with the pandemic and, go try to buy your stuff from, local record stores or underground people. Don't always get your music from Amazon or all the big box stores. Try to support, local businesses and whatnot. So, again, thank you very much. I totally
Oh,
appreciate it,
you're
Ann. And I guess we'll see you next time on a next episode of the Rock Fantasy File. So, see ya.